This is the Heather Petero Show, where conversation meets calling. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And today's guest brings calm, clarity, and conviction to conversations about education. And honestly, in a world full of parenting experts yelling at us in 15-second reels, that already feels like a minor miracle. Lisa Renea Shaw is a lifelong language lover, educator, author, speaker, and cultural advocate. She's fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. She spent over 16 years teaching in real classrooms, like fluorescent lights, bell schedules, the whole thing. And in 2020 founded My Other Tongue, a language school built on the idea that learning another language isn't just about vocabulary. It's about identity, belonging, and possibility. She's also the creator of Liam's Faith Adventures, a children's book series that helps families talk about empathy, kindness, resilience, and self-control. Basically, the stuff we hope our kids absorb without us having to do a daily lecture or TED Talk. So, Lisa, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here today.
Oh, this is a joy. I tell you what, I know just enough Spanish to get me in trouble, so don't test me on that, okay?
Fair enough. I won't.
Well, you have done public school, homeschooling, curriculum design, writing. When someone asks you now what you do, what feels most true in this season of your life?
Oh, man. What do? I help parents and children and educators connect. I like translating the big ideas, the ones that feel scary and oftentimes frustrating, into smaller, doable steps. So that's kind of what I do.
You describe your work as helping people, and I read in some of your material on your website that you are helping them find their voice in another language. That's not academic. That sounds very personal. And when did language stop being about conjugations and start being about identity and belonging for you?
Well, I think when we realized, as a classroom teacher, when we realized we were producing students that were not going to be fluent in the language, right? Because language is very functional. We use language every day to help us accomplish tasks, right? So when we're conjugating verbs and when we're studying vocabulary, that's all well and good. But when we talk about its functional use within society, we need to be able to accomplish those tasks. And so I think it really came, from thinking about and meditating on the idea that we need to have language that's functional, weaves into our everyday life, that doesn't feel stressful, and that's just very useful.
So dinner party test, no jargon allowed. Someone comes up to you at a party and they say, explain to me what you do. What would you say? What's your non-boring answer?
Okay, I help parents and kids learn language together and have fun doing it.
Well, and fun's the game, right? Especially in education. I'm a music teacher, and when I teach, I always say, if it's not fun, why do it? Not only for the student, but for the teacher as well. And I think that goes along with the creativity and the things that we get to be in that space together, that creative space together. And I think that's so important for not only the student, but for the teacher as well.
Absolutely. I think we really need to find ways to engage at higher levels, especially in a society today where we have a lot going on. We have a lot of AI, we have a lot of in-person friendships, virtual friendships. We just need to find ways to connect in ways that are meaningful.
You've seen education from the inside and the outside. So from that perspective, what are families actually hungry for right now? Because I'm guessing it's not more homework and worksheets.
No. Families are, I think, just really wanting to be informed, want to know what's going on, want to know how they can help, and want to know kind of what the exchange is. What part do I have to do? What part are you doing? And in the parts where no one's kind of sure what their role is, how can we work together to try to fill those gaps?
Yeah, that's great. You're really clear in your materials on your website that bilingualism is an asset and not a problem to solve. And yet there's still so much fear about it. Why do you think that mindset sticks?
I'm not really sure, but my guess would be because in the US specifically, we are a very monolinguistic society. We speak one language generally. In other countries, especially countries across Europe and Africa, multilingualism is every day because where we're crossing state, the size of our states are the size of other people's countries. And so living on border towns, having to interact, do business, make relationships, bilingualism or multilingualism becomes very important. So I think it's a geographical thing. It's a social thing that has to do with our society. And so we're just kind of working our way through it. And I think that once we get over the fact, or once we recognize how important it is to really learn language for more than just business or some of those practical uses, we actually will become a more multilingual society.
You have a child, and what do you think if the average American parent was listening and they wanted to expand their child's creativity and their child's learning? What age would you say they needed to start introducing language into their child other than English?
From day one. I would say as early as possible. I know that's a huge debate amongst a lot of parents because there's a fear about mixing up languages, about language dominance, one being stronger in one language more than the other, which naturally kind of happens, I think, depending on how you structure the language environment. But I think being very intentional kind of just really eliminates all those problems. The way that you do language is going to differ according to who's in your household. If you have one parent that speaks a language, both parents speak language, or no parents that speak a language, that's going to look different. And so being intentional is really super important. Starting early is great. I started early with my son, and we started with games. We started with everything that you would do with a normal child, like colors, numbers, phrases, and just really incorporating that into everyday life, not making a separate lesson, but making it part of your daily activities. That's the key.
So, what if a parent is not bilingual or knows another language like you, and they want to introduce their child to another language? How would they do that? What is the language development structure that they could utilize to help their child?
That's a great question. I think most parents will try to find a like dual language program to put their children in, right? But what you can do at home really, really matters because you can expose your kids to different experiences so that they can be fluent and progress in the language. For example, you can have play dates with other kids that speak other languages. Kids naturally absorb what's in their environment, right? So that is hugely important. You can cultivate a playlist of different videos, travel experiences, different things that normal everyday parents can do, even if you don't speak the language. You can take advantage of all this free audio, free programming that's out here, and just curate that experience for your child. Focusing on themes, focusing on topics, taking it slow, and just going in depth. You don't have to go fast, and you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be intentional.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. My son's a young man now, but a young adult. But when he was a kid, Dora the Explorer was very popular, and I think she still is very popular. We watched shows that. Like the Wiggles, they're from Australia. Even though they're still speaking English, it's a different accent, so it's a different hearing understanding. So I think exposing your children to even different accents, even a British accent, even though it's still speaking English, is still good for their brain and still good for their learning.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that example, the Wiggles, because the Wiggles actually have, a program in Spanish as well. And so if your kid was watching the Wiggles in English, you could quite easily just switch that over to Spanish. They've seen that episode, they're familiar with the content, and now it has a lot of meaning because they're now doing that same episode in a language. It's really great.
That's awesome. So you named listening as the through line in your story when we sent you our questionnaire for the podcast today. You are big on listening to kids, families, yourself, and even the stories that languages carry. Why do you think listening is such a struggle in education?
Well, I think we're striving for a lot of things in education. So it's hard to kind of sit back and listen to what really matters. I think there's a lot of goals and lists that are happening on a daily basis. There's goals tied to money, there's goals tied to programs, and at the end of the day, especially with any arena of education, whether it be language or other topics, you have to be able to have whatever you're doing translate, right? Translate in smooth ways, calm ways, acceptable ways. And when it comes to language and when it comes to listening specifically, you have to understand the person who's receiving the information that you're giving, if they're able to do something with it. It can be a readiness issue, it can be a comprehension issue, it can be a fear issue. And if we don't dive into those things, whatever we're trying to share, it just won't translate. It won't work. And so listening becomes key because if I can't hear and understand where you're coming from, I may not be able to reach you and share what I need to share with you.
So, your
Yeah.
homeschooling journey has led to you becoming an author, a children's book author. The book that series that you have been writing is called The Liam's Faith Adventures. Why storytelling? Why not just here's the lesson, now apply it immediately?
Why storytelling? Well, kids love stories, and we can teach so much through story and song, as you very well know, right? It's such a strong medium to really get a message across, a point across. And so storytelling becomes important because it gives space to be free. It gives space to be not the center of attention. It gives space to look outside of yourself and to be able to relate. Super, super important. And storytelling really crafts an experience for us that allows us to really view more than one side of situation. And I think that's where the empathy comes in. That's where the character comes in. Because if we can only view our side, then we are not going to be very empathetic. We're
Right.
not going to be every understanding of other people's situations, cultures, or experiences.
Right, exactly. So these books focus on the empathy that you're speaking about, and then kindness, resilience, self-control. These so-called soft skills, which somehow turn out to be the hardest ones. So, how does faith shape those conversations without kids immediately checking out?
That's a very good question. So, when approaching this project, Liam's Faith Adventures, I was thinking about, when you're homeschooling at the time when we started it, thinking about these ideas, we were homeschooling. And so, when you're thinking about Liam's Faith Adventures, thinking about how can I teach my son, my child, godly character, godly principles, social character, principles, family values in a way that makes sense, in a way that really honors what we are learning, doing, striving for at home and outside of home. And so that becomes super, super important. And storytelling becomes the vehicle, and the content becomes their life experience. Kids are going through all types of social situations. They're making friends, they're learning how to share, they're thinking about who they are, they're building their confidence, and, wanting to really capture the fact that they are beautifully and wonderfully made, that God made them special, God made them who they are, wherever they land. That is true. And the stories help us tell the story of how learning scripture, how learning character really plays out in everyday life, and how you can be successful in helping others, sharing love and empathy through the stories that we share.
That's wonderful. So you're really trying to help build whole child awareness and whole human awareness, right? Because those kids grow up to be adults, and as we teach them to be kind, to share, to be resilient in a hard world. That helps them become adults who are kind and caring and know how to share and to be resilient. And I really love that. The language, the storytelling, the arts, especially in a homeschool environment, these aren't extras in your world. They are very much the curriculum. And why do creative disciplines matter so much in raising these whole humans?
Wow. Creative disciplines, that's where they make the connections, right? That gives the experience. And so the creativity that we are developing in our children really gives them a vehicle to really kind of have that flexible thinking, to really look at all sides of a situation. When I'm teaching my son a hard skill or a new skill, I might use a song to teach it, right? And that's the initial part, right? But this the memory that he's going to have, and it's the application that we're going to use in the next situation that's really gonna really make just learning fun. And creativity makes everything fun. Hard things, it makes fun. When you're singing a song about something hard, when you're learning a poem, when you are writing, you're holding space for things that matter. Even if you're painting, anything creative, when we use that space to share messages, and really what we're talking about is messaging, right? We are really leveraging everything that God gave us to just really touch people's hearts and minds.
That's good stuff. What have you noticed as far as differences in confidence or emotional expression in kids that are learning language alongside story, art, music, and the creative expressions?
A huge boost in confidence, a huge boost in the ability to kind of reach out to others and connect. Language is about communication. And so we communicate in different ways. We communicate orally, we communicate with our gestures, we communicate with looks, we communicate with a lot of different ways. And so, it's really amazing how we can come together, just use all our creativity to just really connect. And so I think language with all the other disciplines, creative disciplines, is something that, man, it just opens up worlds. I mean, once you access a language, for example, you're accessing, and a lot of times, a culture, you're accessing food, you're accessing all those fun things. And when, we use creative space, when we use our creativity to connect with people, we just have so many more rich experiences.
Yes, for sure. For sure. All right. So let's get deep here on this one. What is
Okay.
one thing parents are way more stressed about than they should be, and one thing they're not stressed enough about?
That's a good question. I think parents are stressed about keeping up, keeping up with everything, keeping up with calendars, keeping up with events, keeping up with making sure my kid's on top, whatever things, just keeping up, I think in general is the way I would explain it. Parents are obsessed about keeping up. And what they should be more concerned about is having calm, having peace, and having connection. I think those things are super important because those sometimes are the things we don't get enough of. It's all well and good to go to 15 birthday parties in a month. Not really, not really, but just to have those moments where you can kind of connect and talk and mentor, learn from each other, which I think is super important. No one talks about how much our kids really teach us about being a better human being. Those are the things that parents need to be more concerned about.
And this is related, and maybe this could be even a little therapeutic. If you could delete one sentence parents or even teachers say about kids' education from the universe forever, what would it be?
We all need to move more into a space. I think we all are really moving more into a space of self-learning. You know what I mean? I see all these creative kids learning languages through YouTube, learning how to play and go deeper with their instruments and their musicality through YouTube. And I think that that whole sit and get culture it needs to be over, should have been over, and we just really need to tap into kids' creative genius, what they're already doing and leverage what they're already doing, what they already know how to do to learn new material.
Oh, yeah. I don't like it when people say, oh, children are our future, because they are actually our now. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
that has to do with they're just looking at what could be instead of that these kids can do a lot more now than we give them credit for if we just let them imagine and create and give them an opportunity to express themselves as well.
Absolutely. I agree with that for sure.
So, what's a piece of well meaning parenting or education advice that actually makes things worse?
I think the idea of limiting access to content is a bad idea, right? And going back to kind of the one schoolhouse back in the day, right, where you might read a story or you might have a all every student may have the same text that they're dissecting, and they're dissecting it in different ways depending on their age and their levels and their understanding. I think that we have gotten into a very bad habit of taking content and changing it and making it smaller, instead of keeping it the same and providing support, because you never know how a kid can respond to something that's an area of interest or a topic that really touches their heart, because they'll show up big for that. But if they never access that, have access to that because of the lack of exposure, that's a really big problem. And I
And,
think that routinely happens.
well, and what kind of content are you speaking about?
It could be musical content, it could be text content, it can be any type of text type that we would not give to kids, obviously age
Hmm.
appropriately, right? But that we would not give to kids because we think it's too hard.
Right.
Kids have an amazing ability to do a lot of hard things. So I think just limiting content for them, in terms of like uh, texts or musical pieces, or because we just think they just don't have the capability of reaching those levels. Give them an opportunity, give them a chance. You'll be surprised. Sometimes it's just that one kid that needs that extra, exposure so that they can show up big.
Well, and also need to know that an adult believes in them. And
Absolutely.
there are times that I give challenging pieces to my students, no matter their age. I've got an adult student right now who's working on a German classical piece. She's never sung in German before, and she's having to learn new things. And I've got a piano student who I've given a probably a little step up piece that might be a little harder than another teacher may have given him, but I also believe in me, and I also believe in that student as well, and I think that sets kids up for success.
Absolutely. I love that.
All right, so this is getting into the fun side a little bit. You
Okay.
said you are oddly opinionated about people clapping when a plane lands. Okay, tell us why.
Well, isn't it funny, right? Because that clap when you're landing is like, oh my God, we made it. We didn't die today. But you know what? I think in life, we have to approach it with a sense of this is going to be great. This is going to be positive. There's something in store for me. And I think sometimes, it sends the wrong message or we connect with it differently. I don't know. So it's kind of like that, that whole idea of hope and joy on the other side. We should expect that, not be holding our breath.
Well, for me, as a performer, I see it as clapping for the pilot that he did a good job. So, so
But
I
that's
I'm coming at it from a positive side.
well, very good. Yeah, that's a different perspective, But I think sometimes when that clap is accompanied by like a, whew, oh, that was rough, it might be a little slightly different.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So then on the plane thing, window or aisle seat, since you have thoughts on the landing, surely you have thoughts on the seating.
Window.
Window, of course, all right. A word in Spanish or Portuguese that should exist in English but doesn't.
Oh, fica. or ficar. It means a lot of different things. It can mean to get, to obtain, where something's located, but it's one word. And in English, we have separate words for those different concepts. So something like that would be cool if it existed. But we really, the closest thing we have is get, but
Uh-huh.
get get is close, but
Yeah, there you go.
not all encompassing.
There you go. Tacos or tapas?
Tacos,
Okay. Physical books or Kindle?
physical books,
Okay. Blank page or a messy first draft?
blank page.
Vintage charm, minimalism.
Vintage charm.
Uh, one instrument you wish you could play.
Cello?
Cello, okay. If you said piano, I could help you with that. Board games or movie night?
Board games.
Messy kitchen or laundry pile? Which one do you ignore first?
The messy kitchen.
Okay. Let's see. Socks with sandals, fashion statement or an immediate no?
Immediate no.
All right. So what's one trend you don't get?
6'7". I don't
I
get
can't
it.
believe you're even mentioning that. I know. Yeah, that kids are crazy about that right now.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I know it's nuts. But kids, they have their own little world in there, don't they?
Yes, they do.
So you've chosen slow, intentional living over the hustle culture, which at this point almost feels rebellious. Why
Yes.
why was that choice important to you?
Well, I think with many of the things that I try to do in life these days, it has to be something that I can make work for me, right? So I can't make hustle culture work for me because it just doesn't. I have to have things that are sustainable, things that are lasting, things that are calm, things that are foundational in my life. And a lot of times when you're trying to go here and there and all over the place, there has to be a point where you have to stop and you have to think about what's adding value to your life, what's making an impact on others. And if it's not running through that lens, if it's not doing those things, we really need to reconsider how we're spending our time, how we're spending our resources. So, yeah, I think having calm, slow, intentional steps to anything that you do, to anything that you're doing is going to limit frustration and it's going to have a greater, better impact and a better quality of life is what you're going to end up with.
Yeah, the young people are very much into what they call slow culture, and it's Gen Z who's leading the charge in that. My nephew just bought 10 acres out in the middle of nowhere and has goats and chickens, and very unusual for a 24-year-old kid, right? So
Yeah.
I've been watching all these TikToks and reels on these young people wanting to learn how to can and sew and bring back the things that our grandmother taught us, which I think is really cool because
Amazing.
I think it's a good thing for sure. So if a parent or educator who's listening right now is feeling overwhelmed, behind, or maybe quietly panicking, what do you want them to hear today?
What do I want them to hear today? I want them to hear that I want them to know that they have to keep the main thing, and that they have to be there to educate and connect with kids. Because a connection with a kid and giving kids the proper support that they need is gonna do so much work because kids can teach them things. I'm sorry, kids can teach themselves anything if given the correct support, and they can learn anything if given the correct support, and they can soar so high if they just have someone in their corner. So
Anything else you would like to leave our listeners with today?
I would just say tapping into your own creativity, whether it be singing, whether it be making music, making silly noises, crafting, using that as a vehicle to connect with others is really powerful in the realm of education, in language, in a lot of different spaces. That's what I do, and I hope that people will join me in doing that as well.
That's wonderful. Well, Lisa, thank you for your wisdom, your honesty, and your steady presence today in a loud world and all that you're doing. You're a great mom. I've witnessed that firsthand. You're doing such a great job with Liam and such a great wife to your wonderful husband, Jerry. Y'all are doing an amazing job. And I'm so proud to be on this journey with you guys and to share this space and this time with you and your family.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the work that you do. It really makes a difference in our life. With my son is doing piano, and that I've seen him blossom and do such amazing things. And I thank you for not limiting him and exposing him to the things that he needs to know so that he can grow, learn, and thrive.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you if they wanted to find out more about Liam's faith adventures and the language building school? Can you share with us?
Absolutely. So in terms of language, I can be found, the name of my company is My Other Tongue Language School. I can be found at www.myothertongue.com, and you can find all the information you need there to contact me and get in touch and enroll in classes if you're interested. In terms of information about Liam's Faith Adventures, they are being sold currently right now on Amazon. I have an author's page. You can kind of read about the book and kind of what the goals are and read about myself and Liam and kind of what we're accomplishing with our work together. So those are some ways you can kind of find me and reach out to me, and I'll welcome any type of connection and feedback that we can offer to your audience. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. We've been talking with Lisa Shaw today, so be sure to go check her out at myothertongue.com and check out Amazon for Liam's Faith Adventures. Thanks again, Lisa.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Heather Petero Show, produced by Heather Petero Studios. Connect with us on Facebook or Instagram, or visit heatherpetero.com. Until next time, stay creative and live on purpose.